So we have one of the, I guess, most expected but heartbreaking breakups in the entire content creation sphere. And no, I'm not talking about Destiny and Melina. I'm talking about the Daily Wire and Candace Owens. They have decided to break up. As Jeremy Boring announces, the Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship. Now, what exactly caused this this breakup of theirs? What was their tiff? Why couldn't they work things out? Why couldn't they fight for the relationship? Well, Candace Owens, on her appearance on The Breakfast Club, which I think incidentally occurred like a day or two before she got fired, here she tries to explain kind of like the rift between her and the Daily Wire and why things have been so tense between them lately. If you guys don't remember, Candace Owens is, she's been critical of Israel. That criticism of Israel had led Ben Shapiro to, during a Q&A at a public event, say that Candace Owens' conduct had been shameful or whatever, and then go on talking down about the way that she was carrying herself as well as the stances that she was taking. And to be fair, I would criticize the way that Candace Owens has carried herself too on many occasions, but generally speaking, like, her positions when it comes to Israel don't seem to be that wild from what little I've seen. Now, I'm no Candace Owens fan, right? So don't necessarily take my word for it, but Israel, for as much as I can understand it, they have committed war crimes in their fight against Hamas. So while they certainly should continue to fight Hamas, I agree with Trump, right, that that the IDF needs to hurry up with the war, wrap things up, and go on and get their peace. That doesn't mean that you, for example, use white phosphorus, right, on civilians. It doesn't mean that you starve civilians either. Now, to be fair, they did lift up that siege, but things like that, I think, are where, our human rights violations kind of like come into play there. Now, certainly not to downplay what Hamas did, which, to be fair, Hamas has done far worse, violations of international law, and things of that nature. But at the same time, you can't just ignore what Israel's doing, right? Even if you're going to say, yeah, woo, IDF, go get them bad boys, which is what I think we all should be doing. But anyways, here's Candace Owens' take on the whole situation. I'm kind of blathering on here.
I love the way that you and Ben Shapiro are able to disagree, but then I guess still have a business relationship, because I saw him recently tell you, I think this was maybe a few months ago, he told you to quit over your Israel coverage, your Palestine Israel coverage.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, he told me, the tweet that he responded to was actually just some biblical passages. Mm-hmm. And he thought that it was me saying that I had to choose money over I don't know how we interpret it, but it was definitely not. I just meant it as, like, peace, calling for peace, because, there was a video circulating of him calling me a disgrace and a faux professional or whatever it was. And I decided.
I think I remember this. Because I did listen to this. I think that this is one of the few disingenuous sections of this interview, because Candace Owens was basically saying, she was like, oh, she was just calling for peace or whatever. That's not really what she was doing. She had responded with the quote, I think, saying you can't serve both God and man or whatever, to Ben Shapiro, kind of like criticizing her for her takes. And I think what Candace Owens was basically saying with that response in reality was, you're not going to get me to bow to you if that means that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, or if I'm not standing for what I think is right. So she's like, hey, if there is a divide between me following God and saying the truth about, or at least what I think is the truth about the situation in Israel, versus following the money and doing whatever you tell me I should do, I'm going to follow God. That sentiment certainly makes sense. And I think any content creator, especially one who claims to be a Christian, should be following that to the letter, to the best of their ability. But I think it was kind of a personal dig as well. I think that she probably should have used her own words instead of trying to quote scripture passages and be all pithy.
To choose peace, and then when I chose peace, he responded to peace with not peace.
Why wouldn't he just fire you?
Well, as I explained on Tucker Carlson's show, like, Ben doesn't have the power to fire me.
I mean, that is true. Jeremy Boring has the power to fire her, which it appears that he might have done.
And it's not even saying that we disagree on Israel and Palestine. I just think that he's obviously His wife is Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
He spends a lot of time in Israel throughout the year. I think when you have an emotional attachment to some place, that sometimes your reaction to anything is going to be more extreme to it. You know, I have some relatives that are from St. Thomas. If what was happening in that region was happening in St. Thomas, I would probably be the most fired up out of everybody at the Daily Wire.
Right, like when the whole situation with Moscow happened, I'm like, that sucks. But I'm not like glued to the television because that did not happen in America. If it happened in America, I would be like listening to the mainstream media coverage like throughout the entire day while I'm at work. But that's not what I did.
And yeah, he definitely went through, I think, an emotional time at the end of last year, you know, dealing with everything. I think I was pretty even keel. I don't want to see innocent Palestinians killed. I don't want to see innocent Israelis killed.
Yeah, I will say, like, level-headed is not the word I would typically use to describe Candace Owens. She did appear to be, at least to some degree, level-headed with the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So I have to give her props for that. Because, you know, to her point, she is right. Ben Shapiro did come off as extremely emotional, especially in the immediate advent of the October 7th attack. So I think that in hindsight, all the content creators involved should be taking a step back and be like, okay, when there's a big tragedy, how do I respond to this in a way that's measured? And I still stand on business, right? I still back my principles, but I don't end up looking kind of hysterical when I do so. You know what I mean?
I never want to see children killed. I don't believe children should have to grow up in a war zone based on the actions of a few. And that, I guess, last year sounded crazy. It sounded crazy because always the demand in all these situations is to make people pick a side. And then if you don't pick their side, then you get smeared and you get libeled, right? So if you don't say, I want every Palestinian murdered, then suddenly you're pro-Hamas. If you don't say, like, I want
Now, to be fair, I think that she is misrepresenting the position of the Zionists writ large. I don't know how far right Ben Shapiro and the others were on this issue because I don't really listen to the Daily Wire. It feels just very like conservative ink for me, like to me. But the majority of Zionists don't really want to see all Palestinians killed. They just want the Israelis to stop being killed, like the citizens stop being killed. So like no more terror attacks from Hamas, you know, things of that nature. That's their primary goal. So to say like, oh, what you want me to say, like kill all the Palestinians is a little bit ridiculous, To be fair, not entirely unexpected, right? This is Candace Owens that we're talking about here, but I just wanted to set the record straight because I think that she is misrepresenting the Zionist position to some degree here.
Every Israeli person eradicated, you know, then suddenly you're pro-apartheid, whatever the arguments are, and I think both of that is extreme.
You said no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide, ever. There is no justification for genocide.
Yeah. That is going to age so well.
That's true.
Genocide is always wrong. It is, guys. It is always wrong. And doesn't matter at any point in human history.
I wonder if she's embracing the conspiracy theory that Israel is participating in genocide at the moment, or not, because that's certainly a claim to make. Right, considering the extremely limited, if existent at all, evidence kind of pointing in that direction. So that's kind of an out there thing to say. Not that Candace Owens is beyond making, I guess, bombastic or dramatic statements, right? But interesting.
Any person that is advocating for genocide is always in the wrong. And when I wrote that tweet, I was referring to Brian Mast, who's a congressman. He got up and he literally said in Congress that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian.
That's a far right talking point I've heard from like the Israeli camp. So I mean, yeah, that is a statement that resonates with some Zionists, but not the majority of them, I'd argue. And they're more Zionists than you would think, right? I think when people hear the word Zionists, they expect some dude who's just like an ultra nationalist on the behalf of the state of Israel. But really it just means that like you believe that Israel has the right to exist in some capacity. Even among Zionists, there's disagreements as to what land Israel should have right to, for example, or to what extent that they can, when it comes to force, that they can use to retaliate against the people who have attacked them. So, the idea that like Zionism is like this small niche of people who are, racists and hate Muslims and hate Palestinians is a little bit silly. It's actually, I think, the majority of Americans, which is why the majority of Americans in Congress all support Israel as well.
And I was like, that is genocidal, right? As soon as you say an entire group of people are all evil, you are now laying the groundwork to justify a genocide. And that, to me, was wild. So I spoke up against it.
Have you been like?
So, by the way, the argument that was used for statements like that, at least from what I heard, basically was that the Palestinians in Gaza, they voted for Hamas, and Hamas is doing all these things. So it's Hamas's fault that they're doing these things, but who Hamas wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the civilians. The problem with that line of logic, and I need to do my research, okay? Clarification, I need to do my research. And I do have a mega document that I'm very, very, very slowly working on that is like supposed to be like a comprehensive catalog of all of the events that have happened in the formation of the formal state of Israel. But as I understand it, Gaza, they were set to do elections. Hamas showed up and they basically coerced people and forced them into voting for them. And once they were elected into power, they never had another election again. So first of all, many of the people who initially voted for Hamas were likely coerced in doing so. They did not do so willingly. And second of all, many of the people who are like adults in Palestine now probably never even voted for Hamas because that happened so long ago. So those are two important factors when it comes to, there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian, because that's kind of where that claim is coming from. And that's also the problem with that claim.
Ball from Fox News?
No, I just stopped going on Fox. I used to, my schedule's very busy, but I used to go only once a week on the Tucker Carlson show, and then Tucker left Fox News. So I just didn't go on Fox News.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not all that happened to that situation, because Andrew Klavan lashed back out. No, he didn't. I don't think he lashed out. I have not seen this yet. I did hear that he responded to Candace Owens. Not to Candace Owens specifically, but to the entire situation. So here is what Andrew Klavan had to say in response to this. I believe he's the only member of the Daily Wire who has said anything in response to this. I'm not expecting Brett Cooper to comment on this. She's the only Daily Wire person to actually watch. Wouldn't be shocked to see Michael Knowles respond. I don't think Crane & Company is going to say much about it, but let's see what Andrew Klavan had to say about this whole situation.
So, listen, I had my show all written out and all planned, and then Jeremy, the God King of the Daily Wire, announced that the Daily Wire and Candace Owens have parted ways. And you will want to know, did I know this was coming? Yes, I did. And I knew it had come and it hadn't been announced, but I didn't realize it was going to be announced moments before I came on the air. Someone posted on X, Candace Owens is gone, so now Andrew Klavan is the only black woman at the Daily Wire, and that's obviously true, so I feel a certain responsibility to talk about this. There's going to be an absolute crap storm, obviously, coming out of this, and we're already getting... I looked on Twitter, or X, just before I came on, and every single thing that was trending was us. It was like Jeremy, it was the Daily Wire, it was Candace, it was all just going on, and that's going to continue for a while. And so what I'm going to do, because I just don't feel right just leaving it there and not saying what I think and where I stand, so you know, because that's what we're here to do. I think I'm just going to talk about it from every angle, because it has a lot of different angles that I want to talk about. And I don't know whether that's going to take me 10 minutes or it's going to take me the whole show. It's probably going to take me longer than I think.
Yeah, I've got the timestamps. This takes about like 11 minutes.
And so we'll interrupt it with commercials if you're not a subscriber, which you should be. But I'm just going to say everything I have to say. And because you listen to this show and you know me, you know I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, that no one can come in here and tell me what to think. Obviously, I'm not going to violate any confidences or anything like that, but I'm going to tell you what my impression about this. I can only give you my take, and I can only, whenever anybody says to you, oh, he said this because of that, or they told him to do this or that, this is simply not true. I can guarantee you 100% that that's not true. So first, let me give you my personal point of view about this in terms of the people involved. I want to say that I am extremely proud of Jeremy, our God King. Responsibility for doing this is on him, and he did, as I will explain to you why I think this, he did what was right and what had to be done and what was definitely coming. No. And maybe some people...
No. This is not the way that this should have been handled at all. I think this was like this is an awful way to handle the drama, especially because, look, if you are running a content creation company, an organization, and I don't understand why not a single major content creation organization I have seen that like handles punditry and commentary. I feel like no one understands this. The cable news media doesn't understand this. Companies like the Daily Wire doesn't understand this. The Blaze doesn't understand this. What is it? I don't even think Steven Crowder's new group understands this. Neither does Rumble, from what I understand. I think the closest thing that we get to a company that understands this is actually Kick.com. But you have to understand that in order to have the widest reach as a company, you can't just cater to a single audience. Like one thing I would love to do in the future, I have a gazillion ideas of things I would love to do in the future. But one of those things I would love to do in the future is run some sort of like content creation organization, just like, to keep things generally vague. And one of the things I would do is I would have not only right-wing commentators, but I would have left-wing commentators. And I would have people talk about not just politics, but talk about other things. And I've seen the Daily Wire slowly but surely kind of like branch out to other types of commentary, like Brett Cooper talks about things that are trending on Twitter /X or whatever, or like TikTok, or maybe even YouTube to some degrees. There's Crane Company, which is like kind of talking about sports, but they talk about politics way too much on that show still. But like, how come there's no left-wing Daily Wire program? Well, because the whole point of it is pushing a certain narrative. So of course they're not going to make a left-wing program. How come there's no left-wing program on the Blaze? Well, the point of the Blaze is to be a bastion for conservatism, so they're not going to push any left-wing programming. Why doesn't Rumble get any sort of left-wing program? Well, I think for them it's more about like there's no market gap really, because left-wing hosts can just like be on YouTube and continue to fail because left-wing content creation doesn't really succeed usually on the internet. So like, these companies need to understand that you can't just cater to a very narrow audience. I think, actually, you know what? Let's give props to News Nation, right? Let's give props to News Nation because they have Leland Vittert and Chris Cuomo back to back. A left winger who used to work for CNN and a right winger who used to work for Fox News, back to back in their opinion section. So you know what? Let's give credit to where credit is due. News Nation does have some balance in their commentary. And also I think C-SPAN is relatively balanced as well. But that's not really content creation or punditry. That's mostly just either repeating what is being said from podiums or repeating the opinions of people who call in. Is basically the point of C-SPAN. So the Daily Wire, I think, has made a fatal mistake by saying that you must be a staunch Zionist. You must be a staunch Zionist. You refuse to criticize Israel or not talk about the entire situation at all if you want to work at the Daily Wire. That's a terrible precedent to set. Did Candace Owens behave unprofessionally in some of her conduct throughout this feud? Absolutely. But I think that Ben Shapiro handled himself worse. And I don't think any of them handled themselves in ways that are so bad that as a runner of a company, I could not pull that person aside and be like, hey, you can come back from this. Just clean up your act a little bit, be a little bit more civil, and you can continue working here. I don't think that there was anything that was like too far. I don't think anyone crossed the line necessarily to a point where I would have to say, like, you can't work here anymore. I don't think any of those lines were crossed. So there's no need to fire Candace Owens unless it's for her opinion. And if you're firing her for your opinion, then you have to accept the fact that the Daily Wire is there specifically to push a specific narrative. And if you don't fall within those narrow parameters, then you're out. And I think it's just an awful way to run a business. You could. It's great to even have right and left wing hosts because like you can attract people from the left wing and the right wing, theoretically, and you can just get more viewers that way. And even from a very smaller scale, you can get in more conservatives if you allow someone like Candace Owens to be on the Daily Wire, because there are many conservatives who do not want to be full-throated supporters of Israel. Many people who are acknowledging the fact that Israel has committed war crimes during this war against Hamas, as justified as that war may be. So, it's a little bit silly to be like, oh, we can't associate with anyone who criticizes Israel at all. Like, because at that point you kind of make yourself come off as like some sort of cult, right? Well, that's the thing with cults. Like you cannot criticize the person in charge, right? You can't criticize the doctrine. You cannot think for yourself. That sort of seems to be the same types of culture that they're fostering here at the Daily Wire, and I think that's a shame, considering that the Daily Wire is I think clearly one of the biggest conservative content creation groups. Now, are they the most popular? I think that is to be disputed, but at the same time, their size matters when they're so big that they're starting to get their podcasts aired on the radio, like their talk radio programs at this point. So I really don't understand this take here, but maybe Andrew Klavan is going to explain himself in the next paragraph or so.
People felt he should have done it sooner. I know some people felt he should have done it sooner, but they're not watching what happens. It's and this is a business. Things move slowly. All kinds of obligations are in play. He did it.
Who was saying that she should have been fired sooner? I think many people were thinking that she might have been fired sooner, especially with the general perception that like because Ben Shapiro basically serves as a front man for the Daily Wire, that someone would have to fall in line with his ideology in order to work there. But no one, I don't know if anyone was saying, "Yo, you need to fire Candace Owens."
When he felt it was
like
right.
low-key, I think the internet's basically clowning on the Daily Wire for firing Candace Owens, right? Although they're also kind of clowning on Candace Owens for thinking that she could work for a corporation and still be able to speak her mind.
And I have to say that I personally felt a weight taken off my shoulders, and I'm grateful to him, not just for doing this, but for being the person he has become over the course of what is a tremendous success. And like I said, I'm really proud of him. I'm grateful to him because I feel a personal weight taken off my shoulders that this has happened. And
How? It was like, oh, now I don't have to deal with the burden of working for the same company as Candace Owens. Like, what? Is this like Andrew Klavan, or is this Anna Kasparian? Like,
and that is not a hit on Candace, a personal hit on Candace, which I will also talk about in a minute. But let me just say first that I know the big hit, the thing that is going to come from the right, the people who think that the attack we're going to get from the right, because who cares what attack we get from the left? They kill babies. We don't care what they think. But the big hit we're going to get from the right is free speech. And I want to explain this. I'm a big free speech advocate.
The free speech angle is kind of stupid because no company is required to host or sponsor someone no matter what they say. What about Don Lemon, right? Was the right complaining about axing Don Lemon's program when Elon Musk basically threw a fit because he didn't like the questions that Don Lemon was asking him, and said, you know what, we're not going to have you on X after all. At least we're not going to pay you to be here. Who was writing a complaint about free speech? No one. Elon Musk actually has shown himself to repeatedly be an anti-free speech person, right? He's censored Discord moderators, right? I think he's banned the official map flag from X. So he's not a free speech dude. right? He's not a free speech dude. And so I think it's funny. Like, I don't know how much discourse there's been saying, oh, this is anti-free speech. But it would be funny if people are complaining about this because of free speech while using X and lauding Elon Musk for Twitter 2.0.
Used to say there was a free speech purist, but that would be silly. Nobody's a free speech purist, but I'm a very, very strong supporter, not just of the First Amendment, but of the point of view that goes on behind the First Amendment. And this idea that we have canceled somebody for what they say is...
Which you have, by the way. You have.
Absurd on the face of it, and I
Why
will
is it
explain
absurd? Why is it absurd? Please tell me.
I can come in here and express any opinion I want. No one will ever tell me, don't say this, don't say
That's because the opinions that you want to express are in line with Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro's. But go ahead.
Say that or say this or say that. It just doesn't happen. But if I woke up one morning and I thought to myself, you know what? I've been saying abortion is bad, but really it's great. It is great. There's nothing I like better than sucking the brains out of children. In fact, we shouldn't just, do it while they're in the womb. We should just do it all wait till they're 1 or 2 when it's more fun because you can hear them screaming. If that suddenly became my opinion, I couldn't bring it in here.
Exactly. You literally said, oh, I can say whatever opinion I want, unless it's a bad opinion. Like what? Like what? You've literally contradicted yourself in your own video.
Because the Daily Wire is not a phone company where anybody can talk. It's not a social media company that I think should let everybody express an opinion. Mm-hmm. It's essentially an online magazine. It is a journal that stands for something.
Yes, but at the same time, you can't lie about whether or not the Daily Wire would censor your opinions because, if you decide to be pro-choice and they don't let you air that opinion on there, then yeah, like that is censoring you for your opinion. Now, let's say that you were like using the F-bomb while you were on the air, or you were calling other people names that were extremely crass, rude, and harsh, and you were banned for that. Now, that's not getting banned for free speech necessarily, or at least for your opinion, because it's for how you were saying what you were saying, not that you were saying what you were saying. But this dude over here does like this, like he did 280s in a row. He said like they won't ban me for my opinion unless it's in the form of abortion. Like that alone kind of makes me think that the opinion is the primary reason, like the opinion that Israel has done bad things sometimes is literally why Candace Owens got removed from the Daily Wire.
And one of the things that it doesn't stand for is abortion. And I don't think anyone should come in here. I would quit. I would have to leave. I would have to go in and say, guys, I've seen the light. Killing kids is great, and I can't do that anymore. So I would have to come in and say, as an honorable person, I'm going to remove this. That's something that we can't abide.
That's insane. You want to make change, right? As a conservative pundit, if the Daily Wire today started saying, you know what, we actually support killing babies, why not, as the revolutionary, thought-provoking conservative commentator that you are, be like, okay, well, you know what, I'm gonna stand on business. I'm gonna continue championing the lives of the unborn, and you know what, you can't stop me. If you want to stop me, you're gonna have to fire me. But until then, I'm going to speak truth to power. I'm going to be, in fact, every single show is going to be about how murdering babies is bad. Every time that we have the Daily Wire backstage live stream things, I'm going to be pointing fingers at every single one of you for supporting the murdering wholesale of fetuses. I think that would be the more appropriate response. That'd be like, oh, well, you guys have an opinion I don't like. I'm going to have to leave. See you later, suckers. Like, that's not the way to handle a disagreement of this scale, especially when you're a pundit who is purporting to want to make social change.
At the Daily Wire, because it's not what we stand for. And the same is true of race hatred. And I said this one.
Now I know. Yo, wait a second. Is Andrew Klavan seriously? Hold on, wait. Is Andrew Klavan seriously going to accuse Candace Owens of racism? Because I thought that I was not expecting that he would debase himself to this level. This is shocking.
Once on member block, so a lot of you probably didn't hear it. My problem with race hatred is that it's bad thinking. And the way you know it's bad thinking, I mean, my problem with race hatred is religious. I think it's wrong. But the way you know it's wrong and you know it's bad thinking is it works no matter who you hate. If you figure out that the Jews are to blame for everything, or like the New York Times, you figure out that the whites are to blame for everything. You figure it's the blacks, they're ruining everything. It always works. It always makes absolute sense out of everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could read racism into everything. It
doesn't make sense. It is filling in a lot of nuanced, difficult, detailed things that you have to think about, and it's just spreading this kind of smear of hate over it. And so it always puts things into perspective. Now, having said all this, I don't know what's in Candace Owens' mind.
Oh yeah, he's gonna say, I don't know if he's a racist or I don't know if she's a racist or not. I'm just going to just float that idea out there. And tell me, audience, what do you think of this?
My relationship with Candace has been nothing but collegial and friendly. I would bump into her. I don't know her well, but I would bump into her in hair and makeup. We always greeted each other with pleasantness and friendliness. We always had pleasant little chats. I would see her backstage. I never felt that she wanted my opinion on her work. I never felt invited to give her my opinion on her work. And I am the sort of person who, if asked my opinion on anything, will give it absolutely and bluntly, but never give it when I'm not asked, unless there's somebody standing on my toe. I'm not going to give them I'm not going to volunteer my opinion. So we were friendly, and I certainly have no reason to dislike her personally, and I don't dislike her personally. I've never had any...
If you don't dislike her personally, why are you vaguely accusing her of racism? Right? And of course he's going to say here, I'm not accusing her of racism. Well, why'd you bring it up then, if you weren't going to accuse her of racism?
Meeting with her where I walked away feeling, wow, I don't like that person.
I feel like he's like just planting seeds to where he doesn't have to accuse her of racism, but all of his viewers will.
Any meeting with her where I walked away feeling, wow, I don't like that person. It just didn't happen. And in fact, I felt a small investment in her because, as I have bragged repeatedly of any number of people, I have a weird knack for spotting broadcast talent. I grew up, my father was a famous broadcaster, and so I just know it when I see it. I knew it when I saw it in Ben. I knew it when I saw it in Knowles, that little bit of broadcast talent that he has. I spotted Candace when she was on a small YouTube station doing Blexit stuff, blacks should get out of the Democrat Party stuff. I invited her on my show back when we were in the first office we had in LA, I believe. I had her on my show. She left. I walked down the hall to Jeremy's office. That was back before he had the throne room with the guys with the spears and all that stuff. And I walked down the hall and I said, if you want to bring a woman into this operation, I just met her because that's one of the most talented broadcasters I have ever met. And I would say it then and I would say it now. She is and remains an amazing talent, a person who radiates star quality and someone who just understands what the mic and the camera are all about in ways that I don't come close to. And I just truly admire and still admire what the amazing talent that she has. And by the way, Jeremy did not hire her when I said so. He may regret that because it cost him, a lot of money to wait, but still, I understood what she was the minute I saw her. I was on her show once or twice at the beginning, but I never listened to it. And the reason I never listened to it was because of all the stuff that I felt was silly. I mean, some of the stuff I felt I knew what she was going to say, which was the the Blexit stuff, which I'm all in favor of. But the stuff about the moon landing being fixed, rigged, and 9/11 being...
Okay, this is actually a fair point. She's kind of a conspiracy theorist. Isn't she saying that, like, Emmanuel Macron's, like, wife is, like, a man or something? Which, like, the questions that she's asking are actually interesting. Like, if you look into it, it's like, why aren't there pictures of Macron's wife, like, as a child, a teenager, a young adult? Why do we only have these more recent pictures of her as she's interacting with Emmanuel Macron? She claims she has a sister. Why aren't there pictures of her standing and spending time with her sister? Those types of things. But at the end of the day, like, if there's no solid proof that the person is actually a man, then it is a baseless conspiracy theory founded by just plain interesting questions. And you have to be comfortable with admitting that's a conspiracy theory. I think that Candace Owens, conversely said that she would stake her entire professional reputation or something on Emmanuel Macron's wife indeed being a man. Just a stupid thing to say. So I mean, Andrew Klavan does have a good point where, you know, I think like many conspiracy theorists or people who say kind of like outrageous things, I think actually Quantros, who is like a former Destiny orbiter, is a really good example of this. People who say like off the wall crazy things, even though they say things that are like reasonable at times or things that make sense to some degree, at the end of the day, they are still always going to be relatively untethered from reality. I think that that's probably what Andrew Klavan's going to point to here.
An inside job she would hint at, and recently there was Mrs. Macron, the First Lady of France, is a man, and all that. It's silly stuff, and the reason it's silly stuff is, one, it's not true. It's, you know, the amount of conspiracy it would take to fake the moon.
I mean, some things there could be true, like the whole 9/11 stuff, like that could be true, but I don't know that they're like there's concrete evidence. Like, conspiracy theories are interesting. Conspiracy theories are fascinating, but I think the problem is first of all, people spend too much time thinking about them. They're not as important as the conspiracy theorists would make you think, right? How much does it change of my life today on, you know, March 26th of 2024 if the terrorist attack on 9/11 was an inside job? What does that matter to me? It doesn't. Let's be honest. but another thing too is, like, you can even believe in a conspiracy theory while admitting that there's not proof for it. And I think that's a very important distinction, right? All kinds of questions like, oh, what about Building 7? All this stuff. Like, it's fine. It's fine to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. In fact, if you're not allowed to ask questions, that's a sign you're in a cult, my friend. But at the same time, you can't pretend that a lack of answers to your questions is an answer to a different question. And I think that's the problem with Candace Owens and a lot of other people. This is mostly like people online that you'll find, like the QAnon conspiracy theorists and all those folks. It's more of a plague with them, but it's like, it's fine to indulge in conspiracy theory. Like, as a matter of fact, I would actually encourage you to a degree, because not all conspiracy theories are false. But you can't assume that every conspiracy theory you have is true just because it sounds interesting or relatively compelling.
Landing with nobody saying that it was fake is insane, and everything that sounds like science about it is ridiculous. It's not true. None of those things is true. 9/11 wasn't an inside job. The moon landing wasn't faked. Mrs. Macron has a daughter who looks just like her. She's not a man. But if they were true, Candace wouldn't know, and I wouldn't know, because we don't have that kind of inside information. I don't care what people tell you. That's not the kind of thing that you know unless you are a top investigative reporter and can come up with the documents and show and prove the truth. But that's all that stuff is show business to me, you know? That's what she did. She has this enormous talent. That's her gift. She has a right to decide how to use it. None of my business. You know, she has a huge audience.
Well, look, let's be honest, though. I think that here he's actually being soft on Candace Owens, because if you're misleading your audience, that's serious, especially if it's especially if you are in a position where people believe what you say and they in fact, you know, are using you as a source of news and information, and you're not doing a caveat of, I could be wrong. That's the exact opposite of what Candace Owens did with the case of Emmanuel Macron's wife. So to be like, oh, it's just show business, it's what she does, it's how she gets such a big audience. It doesn't matter. I don't care how big your audience is. I don't care how talented you are. If you're lying to your audience and misleading them, no matter how well-intentioned you are, you should be called out about it. Why do you think that right-wingers whine and complain about the mainstream media? It's not always because they say bad things about us. It's in large part because in many cases, they are intentionally deceiving viewers when it comes to, like, figures like Donald Trump, for example, right? Like calling him racist when there's not really any evidence that he's racist. That's I think the most obvious clear example. The other one is like the whole January 6th was an insurrection thing. It's another lie that the mainstream media has pushed before. Ties between Trump and Russia. Like there are other things that you can find, right, where the mainstream media has lied about things, likely intentionally, to the American people, misleading them. And that is something that the right, will take the mainstream media to task for. Why is Andrew Klavan saying it doesn't matter if Candace Owens is pushing conspiracy theories as long as she's, having fun and getting a big audience with it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Still, and so I guess they like that stuff. It's nothing to me. It just doesn't mean anything to me. It's not the sort of thing I listen to. But that's the way she wanted to go with her talent. That's a choice that each person makes on his own or her own.
I would agree. The decision to lie or to not lie is a decision that everyone makes on their own.
And I am not privy in any way, shape, or form to her thinking. Then the Jew stuff started. And here's what I want to say about this. And this is pretty much what I have to talk about because I don't want to attack her personally. I don't know what's on.
Here's the part where he calls Candace Owens anti-Semite, I suppose.
On her mind and why she went down this road. Like I said, I just don't know her that well. The left has made bigotry and hatred valuable by calling us bigots and calling us hateful when we tell the simple truth. So I say, there's high crime in black neighborhoods, and the high crime is not because of slavery, it is because of fatherlessness, and it's because of a culture that's going on in certain black neighborhoods that is increasing. And the left says, oh, you're a racist. You're canceled. You stink, Somebody says homosexuality is against my religion. No, you can't host the Oscars. You're out of work. I've called to HR. A man can't become a woman. Oh, my God, you have phobia. That's a phobia to say a man can't become a woman. So,
so if he's going to accuse Candace Owens of being a racist, isn't he basically doing the same thing where it's like, Candace Owens says, Israel's committed war crimes. Andrew Klavan, no! You must be anti-Semitic. You must hate the Jews. You must be excoriated from our social group. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? This dude is condemning himself and he doesn't even know it.
Left has used the accusation of hatred and racism, bigotry and phobia to keep us from speaking the truth, which means...
maybe the Daily Wire is keeping Candace Owens from speaking the truth about war crimes that the IDF is perpetrating. Well, I don't know if is perpetrating. The incidents of war crimes, from what I've understood, are not particularly common, but they do happen here or there, and they're still serious. So maybe not all the time or currently perpetrating is the right way to put this. I do want to add that caveat there.
When somebody comes along and says something that makes the left go crazy, it sounds like the truth.
Huh? Dude bolted without making a single point. That doesn't make any sense, man. That was dumb, dude. So the dude over here says that Candace Owens is a great content creator, gives a veiled hint that she's a racist, and then says, you know what? The left sure does make a commodity out of hatred, don't they? And then bolts with some whimsical musical tune. What did I just watch? I feel like I wasted my time. This dude, you could have just given me the cliff notes that Andrew Klavan just called Candace Owens a talented person, but she's anti-Semitic, and called it a day. What was that? He didn't even give an example or reason why he thinks that Candace Owens is anti-Semitic. Now, spoiler alert, she's actually not anti-Semitic because she criticized Israel. But this is so weird and strange. Are we just gonna get this frog march of all of the content creators from the Daily Wire just calling Candace Owens a racist now? Is this the line that's that we're going to see? And if so, this is disgraceful. It's already disgraceful enough, right? That Andrew Klavan has has stooped to the level of calling Candace Owens racist, essentially. But if this just becomes the narrative of the Daily Wire, this is the type of thing I could see taking down the entire network. Candace Owens already, I think, a second to, of course, Ben Shapiro, I think was kind of vying for that number 2 spot of the most, the most popular or most successful content creator on the Daily Wire network. I think that, I do think that Brett Cooper is kind of close to making it to that top spot. She's certainly at the top spot now, but generally, like, Andrew Klavan doesn't get the type of views that Candace Owens gets. What's the name of the guy who made Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh doesn't get the types of views that Candace Owens gets. Candace Owens was one of the top people at the Daily Wire. And so for them to get rid of this incredibly popular person and then accuse her of racism without any basis is really going to turn off a lot of conservative voters, viewers. Even if they give some sort of fake reason why they're calling her a racist, then at least they could be like, oh, well, I could kind of see where you're coming from, like, to a certain extent. Like, but now it's just like out of thin air. Oh, the Jew stuff, without explaining what the Jew stuff is, of course, because if he tried to do that, then he wouldn't be able to make his case at all. I mean, to be fair, he didn't make his case here either. That was garbage. Not to be fair, most of my respect for the Daily Wire had gone down the drain with the whole Stop Big Con thing, where they were kind of lying about Steven Crowder, and they gave him a raw deal and then lied about that too and all that stuff. So that is the Daily Wire being classless is not anything new to me, but them doing it just in the open so brazenly versus behind the scenes, behind closed doors, in conversations with Steven Crowder on the phone. This is just marking a descent for Daily Wire. Now, maybe the Daily Wire Plus with their original content is going to be their saving grace. Actually, that would not shock me, right? Because it does look like they have some interesting programs down the pipeline. But this just is bad. It's just awful. And when you've already lost my respect because you lied about the deal that you made with another content creator, this is just not helping your case. And I think this is how a lot of people are going to start looking at the Daily Wire too. Now, of course, the Daily Wire is going to be in their own bubble. They're going to act like there's no problem at all. They're going to act like things are just business as usual. Eventually, things will just blow over, but that's not going to be the case. I think their audience is going to have an entirely different reaction. And while they continue to act like nothing happened, I think the impact of this move of getting rid of Candace Owens because she's not as staunch of a Zionist as Ben Shapiro is, who of course Candace Owens isn't going to be. It wouldn't necessarily make sense because Ben Shapiro has ties to Israel, grew up in Israel, whatever. So like Candace Owens said, he is going to be more sensitive to the plight of the Israelis and probably more forgiving of what Israel has done in Gaza as well. This whole thing is ridiculous, but I'm low-key looking forward to just this descent, decline, and implosion of the Daily Wire, which seems to be relatively imminent, at least as a leader in right-wing commentary, because I think it's deserved. I've generally found it to be just moderate conservatism, not particularly interesting, not particularly thought-provoking. If you're not watching any content at all and you're watching the Daily Wire, are you getting bad content? Not necessarily, but in the same sense that you're not getting bad content if you're watching Fox News, or you're not getting bad content if you're watching MSNBC reports or something. Is it awful? Not really, but it's not gonna be the best source of punditry, analysis, that type of thing. So we'll see what happens. Probably in a very delicious way as the entire internet eats the Daily Wire alive, as well they should, for the classless way that they and their content creators have been behaving lately.